Tell me if this sounds relatable. You've been hearing about how AI is going to transform businesses for almost 2 years now. In fact, you even see big businesses use AI for calls and lead qualification, customer support, there's chat AI, voice AI, and whatnot, right? But every time you've tried to adopt it for your business, you've hit the same wall. There's just so much to choose from. Do you go with ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini? There is n8n, there is Make.com, Zapier. Do you do voice agents? Do you do chat AI? How do you integrate it with Slack and Gmail and WhatsApp or Telegram? There is just so much to figure out. And this playlist is the answer to all those problems. By the time you finish this playlist, you would have gone from zero to actually using AI to run parts of your business. I ran my own voice AI company for a couple of years and then I sold it. And this playlist is everything that I hoped was available when I started out. So the first thing I want to get out of the way is that the tool we are going to be using is called n8n. It is one of the most powerful tools to create your own workflows, AI agents, and that's the one that we're going to be using in this entire playlist. If I get right into it, basically n8n lets you connect hundreds of different apps and you can create these workflows, automations, AI agents, which sit silently in the back and run whenever it's triggered, which could be manually or automatically. Now, I know what you're thinking, that this is exactly what Make does or Zapier does as well, right? So Zapier is exactly the same thing. But what I found is two key differences. The first one is pricing. So tools like Zapier tend to get super expensive as you start executing more tasks and more workflows every month, right? While n8n can get expensive as well, but they offer something called a self-hosting plan where you can basically purchase your own server for $10, $20 a month and then use n8n on it. And that's all it costs. You can run it unlimited number of times. So that's advantage one. And the second advantage that I find is when you want to build AI agents. And if you're making complex agents which have its own memory and a RAG pipeline, then I think n8n is just far more easier to use and far more capable. So this is the tool that we are going to use. Now, there are three ways to use n8n. The first one is that because it is an open source tool, you could literally download and install it on your device and then run it free forever. The problem, however, is that your workflows work only when you are online. The second way is the easiest way, where you can just get started with n8n directly and use the hosted by n8n services. This is the one that we start with. And the third one is where you buy your own server and you host your own n8n account, and that is far more cheaper, far more scalable. I'll show you all the three ways, but for now, to create your first workflow, let's just get started with the n8n hosted flow. And it's free for 2 weeks. So you could use it for the rest of this tutorial, or you could see the next video where I'll show you how to purchase your own server and run it for like $10, $20 a month. Either ways, the choice is yours. So let's get started with the free trial and I'll put in my company email. So you can set up your account now. So I filled the form and now I can start the free trial, no credit card required. Basic information that you could fill. And once you're done, your workspace is ready and you are in. This is what the workspace looks like. There's an overview. This will start looking different once we have some automations that we've set up. Inside your personal folder, you can create different workflows. You can have all your credentials. Credentials are essentially, my login into, let's say, Gmail or Slack or WhatsApp, things like that. Executions will be a history of all the executions that have happened for your workflows, and you can literally see what happened every time an automation ran. And then there are data tables where you can basically store data of your n8n account. There's a new chat-based way where you could chat with an AI agent and create the workflows that you want. There are a lot of different templates, insights, and we'll get into all of that in other videos, right? But for now, let's actually create a workflow. Let's see what this looks like. So I'll go into create workflow. And this is what the editor looks like. So this is where you can basically start adding nodes, creating your workflow, and we'll do that. Pretty soon you'll start getting comfortable with all of these things here in the dashboard. But for now, let's just name this my. So for the first workflow, we'll do something simple. We'll not get into AI agents, but every business would have some form, right? There would be a Google form or some form or the other where when somebody fills that form, you want that information to come to you over an email, and you want to also send an acknowledgement email to the person who's filled the form, right? So let's create something as simple as that. So I've created this quick form that is also there in the description of the video. So you can come here, fill in your name, email, and fill what kind of automation or workflow you'd like me to make in this playlist for your business. And when you submit this, I will basically link this to a sheet and the responses will come into this sheet, right? And whenever this gets filled, I want to send you an email confirming that, hey, I received your inputs. I'll go over it and I'll let you know once the video is live. So that's the automation we'll build today. So coming back to n8n, we'll add the first step. And the first step is always a trigger. Do you want this to trigger manually? Do you want this to trigger because of some app event on a fixed schedule? And there are multiple ways, right? On form submissions, things like that. In our case, I want this to be connected to Google Sheets. And whenever a new row is added, I want the trigger to take place. Now, every node in n8n looks like this. So there are some inputs. There is your node and the settings of that node and the output that it creates. So for a trigger node, of course, there's not going to be any input, but we'll set it up so that it can give output of whenever a new row is filled. So let's add the first credential. Here, all I need to do is sign into my Google account where we have the sheet connected. So the connection is done. And do I want to fetch this every minute? And there are other options as well, every hour, every day. So how often do I want this to run? Let's say every hour or so. And now I select the document. So this is the Google Sheet that we had. From this sheet is the first tab that I select. The tab name was Form Responses 1. And this triggers on whenever an event is added, right? So once you're done setting this up, we can fetch the test event. So while it works, there is no data found, right? So how about I go and fill in the form? So let's say I fill this, submit it. And when I go here, I can see this new row on the sheet. So if I come back and let's say try to fetch a test event, this works. And you can see the output now. This is what was fetched. You can see it in multiple ways. There is the schema way, table, and JSON. Whichever one you're comfortable with, we'll just leave it at table for now. There are some settings here as well, always output data, retry on fail, things like that, that we'll get into once we make more complicated flows. So for now, we're done with our trigger. Now, what do we want to do with this? We want an email here. So let's add Gmail. And there are just so many things you could do with Gmail, right? So I want to send a message. Now see, for this node, you're able to see the input, which was our Google Sheet trigger, the test trigger that we just ran. Now we can set this node up and we'll then be able to see the output as well. So I'll now again create a new credential, which is basically just logging into the same Google account again. Once it is done, the resource we are using is messages, which is email. I want to send an email. Now, who do we want to send this? So you could either manually here type out values, but in our case, this is not going to be a fixed value. So I could just drag this here and use this here, right? So don't worry about this code that was generated. It was just basically using this JSON to take out the value of the email. But here below, it'll also show what the output actually looks like, right? So it's going to this email and we'll now add a subject line. So let's say the subject line is got your suggestion, will let you know when it's live. The email type will just be a pure text email and within the message. So let me just click here and expand this so that we can type more freely, right? So let's say, hey, and I can actually pull this and use the name here. You can look at what the output is going to look like on the right hand side. So, hey, we're in bed. I quickly got AI to write this. So thanks for filling in. If your workflow idea makes it a series, I'll let you know. In the meantime, the full n8n series is live. Right. So let's say this is the email that we want to send. And let's test it out. Let's execute the step. Now let me quickly check my email. And here it is. This is the email we got. Now, of course, there is this thing called this email was sent from n8n. So actually, let's fix that. Back here, there is an option called append n8n attribution, and we can actually turn that off. So once this is done, let's trigger again. And I got this email again. So the whole flow now is that once we actually publish this, at the moment we've not published it yet. So once I actually publish it, let's call it version 0. And now every hour this trigger will run. It'll check if there are new entries in the sheet. And if any of you have filled the form, you would receive this email from me. If you go into executions, we can look at all the past executions that have happened so far. So if I clicked on this, I can look at this execution. I can get information on what was the sheet trigger and was the message sent or not. I can look at all of that. If an error comes in, you can check that as well. And in later videos, we'll also see how to handle errors and how to ensure that this flow works smoothly. And of course, we'll make far more complicated flows with AI. So I promise you this, that you will not have to go through another course in order to build your own AI agents. You don't have to pay for that. Just follow along with this playlist and subscribe if you've not so far, so that whenever I post a new video, it sort of shows up in your feed. And whatever video you want to see, just let me know in the comments below how I can help you with AI. And I'll try to ensure that I make those videos. I'll see you in the next one.